I always put a lot of faith in people, and in society as a whole. I felt obligated to always give strangers the benefit of the doubt. That's precisely what I did that night I saw that man hitchhiking on the side of the road while driving back from school. Or at least that's how I convinced myself today as to why I had done it. I'd been going to school in Pennsylvania for about 7 months at this point, and the 6-hour drive home was one I'd become quite familiar with. I don't know what made me pull over for that man with his thumb in the air, but I did. It was as if I didn't even make the decision to stop. He ran up to my car and tried to open the door, but I hadn't even unlocked it yet. I still couldn't believe that I was about to pick up a hitchhiker. At this point, I considered just taking off, but that would just be rude. Maybe I was simply bored. Maybe I just wanted someone to talk to for the next few hours. Either way, our paths had now crossed. I unlocked the door. He looked like a hippie right out of a movie. Long dreadlocks, tattered clothes, a long beard and a ragged backpack. He stunk. I still swear I can smell him in my car to this day. He seemed like a nice guy. He told me how one day he woke up and decided to leave everything behind him and attempt to hitchhike from California to New York. He made it sound like something he'd always thought about doing, but at the same time it seemed as though something forced him to leave. He showed me his journal with all the names of the people who had picked him up and in what states they drove him through. I was going to be the person who helped him make it into the final leg of his journey. You could see the sense of accomplishment in his eyes. We made small talk. He told me about some of the more adventurous rides he'd been part of. I told him about going to school in my hometown. He seemed like a genuinely nice guy. Mysterious, but nice. I offered him some of the snacks I had packed for my road trip and his eyes lit up. I don't think he realized that they were for us to share. I was just amazed at this guy. How does someone put their faith in others to get them from one end of the country to the other? How do you leave everything behind and just start a new life? I knew it was a night I would never forget. During the drive, he would scribble in his journal while asking me about myself, where I was off to, and why I was going to school. He said it was nice to finally get a ride from a normal person. He later asked me to take the next exit so he could use the bathroom, and I obliged. He told me he'd be right back. I sat there and waited for what seemed like an eternity. Finally, I began to get annoyed and then just plain irritated. I contemplated driving off and just leaving him at the rest stop, but his pack was in my car and I couldn't just leave it in the parking lot. The man trusted me with everything he had to his name, and he deserved more than that. I glanced over at his seat and saw his journal sitting there, and with him taking his sweet time, I justified this small violation of his privacy. I began leafing through it. I came across short posts about what he hoped New York would be like and how he had always wanted to see the country. I discovered his reason for leaving California, his girlfriend of 3 years who cheated on him. His posts seemed depressing on some pages and incredibly optimistic on others. I began to feel bad for this guy, and it struck me that I didn't even know his name. I read on. He wrote of being picked up by truckers in the Midwest, taking a ride with some Southerners who were all smoking meth, even the driver. He wrote about being taken 200 miles in the wrong direction by an elderly woman who refused to pull over and let him out. Eventually, though, the posts got darker and darker. He seemed to be finding things wrong with every person who gave him a ride. He would find something to hate about every person who would give him a ride, and it seemed to consume him. He began hypothesizing about doing things to these people. Violent and twisted things. I don't know why I didn't realize that at this point it was best to just drive off, but instead I kept reading. I could not put it down. Eventually, I came across 2 pages that were stuck together. I carefully pulled them apart. They were covered in what looked like bloody fingerprints. The post simply said, "God forgive me." I could feel my stomach sink. My mouth was dry. How long had he been gone? I thought to myself, I'm just gonna leave this creepy guy here and go home. I set the journal down and started my car. As I put it in drive, I hear my passenger door handle being pulled. He's back. He can see his journal laying open to the bloody pages on my lap. Despite my doors being locked, he desperately tries to open the door, screaming at me to let him in, pounding on my window with his fist. I floor it. To this day, I don't know what this man did. I threw his belongings out the side of my car about 10 miles down the road. His journal, however, I could not let go.